tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, we're starting a little quiet. All right, I got it. Guys, we missed you last week. I know you missed us. Welcome to the Second Chance After Show right here on AfterBuzz TV. And I am excited because for the very first time, we have a full panel.
Yes!
We're 4 people. Guys, you're going to get a lot of opinions, a lot of analysis, a lot of insight. Hope you're liking what we're saying, what we're putting down every single week, except for last week, of course. If you like what we're putting down, tweet us, follow us on Instagram, all that good stuff. If you're on iTunes, download, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really, really helps us. If you're on YouTube, leave us one of those nifty thumbs up, maybe a comment, you know, all that good stuff. We love hearing from you. But for now, my name is Ty Matthews. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at Ty Matthews PMA. It should be right down there. And I've got 3 lovely, talented co-hosts. Guys, tell them who you are.
Hey there, I'm Stacey Santiago, and you can find me on Twitter at Stacey Santiago. That's Stacey.
Like the song there.
EY.
Hey, I'm Jamie Banks, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JamieBanks_.
Hey guys, I'm Nikki Preston. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Nikki Preston TV, and I'm on Instagram at Nikki.Preston.
Welcome to the show, Nikki.
Thank you.
Jamie and
Excited to be
Stacey,
here.
welcome back,
Thank
of course.
you.
Now let's start. We got a double episode tonight, guys, so we got a lot to fit in. Let's start with episode 6, Palimpsest. Guys, what did we think about this episode?
I did enjoy the episode, but I felt like it was a little bit intense being a woman, putting myself in that position. If, you know, I was captured and someone wants to transform me and do, you know, tattoos and feathers, like I was getting freaked out, I gotta be honest.
It was disturbing. It was very disturbing because I believe she felt like she was someone who could take care of herself, and then she finds herself in this situation.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder, like, what would I do if, like, you know, I feel like I'm a pretty strong girl. I do CrossFit.
Oh yeah, nice.
Sure. You know?
And the thing is, no one believed her either. That's even worse. It's like all the other cases were kind of the same thing, a little bit similar, but this time no one believed her. The house was cleaned out. So I'm so thankful that Jamie believed her.
I've got my own issues with that part. Jamie, what did you think of this episode?
I liked it, but again, it was disturbing. But overall, I did enjoy the episode. And I think since they did put drugs in her body, it made it look even worse. It made her look really... like just like she was high.
She's all hopped up on Molly, absolutely.
My grandmother always used to say to me, "Don't ever put your drink down around anybody."
You know,
totally.
and you would think as a high-end escort, she would know that.
She
you
was
know?
not very smart as far as street smart.
Sure. Well, and see, okay, so here's my thing. You mentioned that the cops didn't believe her.
Yeah.
My thing is that, so Jilly is a very, very intelligent high-end escort. I mean, she's very tech-savvy. She knows all about Mary Goodwin, all about Looking Glass, blah, blah, blah. And never did she once say, like, oh, it was just a guy that kind of looked like a monster. Like, she was sticking to her guns, like, no, these were monsters. Like, well, of course no one believes you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I saw these guys, they definitely weren't monsters.
Yeah,
they were
it's not
kind of
like
freaky.
these guys weren't like flying around breathing fire. Like, yeah, he had some gnarly piercings or whatever.
Yeah.
He's still a guy.
But he did have horns.
He did
He
have
did
horns.
have horns. He did have horns.
And it was dark, so it's kind of hard to see.
But she was able to describe him to a T so that Arthur could put that sketch together.
True.
But the one thing I will say, though, it wasn't like she was at a club. I think you're more leery at a club, like, oh, someone could put something in my drink. They put it in her water bottle when she was getting ready for her run.
This is true.
You don't think, oh, someone's going to try to poison me before I go on my run.
Right, but then it happens again when he puts it in her glass when they have their little marriage
At that
fantasy.
point, she was just dumb because she should have just stayed in her house
Hey,
after
that's
being
what I
kidnapped.
said.
So
Right.
don't go to see a client the day after you're kidnapped.
Exactly.
And stay in the Goodwin house.
Yes,
I mean, that
exactly.
is a pretty amazing house to be in. I wouldn't
know.
leave.
Right, that's pretty much, that's the safest place that you can be, really. I don't know why, after all of that. And then not only that, but after her, like, really deep psychoanalysis of Jimmy, like, he brought me here to show you that he saved me. It's like, whoa, this is a really smart escort.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no offense to any escorts watching, but
they're busy right now. It's about that time. It's 7:22. They're
it's
busy.
after hours.
They're working. They're all at the Oscars right now.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about Jimmy in this episode. What I thought was really interesting is that at the beginning of the episode, Otto explains to him that there's no more glitch in his blood, in his DNA. You know, we saw it kind of, you know, his body started recoding, you know, things. And as Otto is explaining that there's no more glitch in his blood, he's showing him these rats. And I think Jimmy has this like moment of connection as he's like eating the sandwich, looking up at the rats eating their food, like feeling a little bit like nothing more than a test subject at this point.
Well, I was trying to figure out where they're going with that information. It's like, so in the future, are we going to see him evolve into a stronger person?
See, I was wondering about that.
I hope so. I like seeing him all powerful and being able to fight off everyone. And then this show, it was almost like now he's back to being powerful again. You know, like a couple episodes back, he was kind of weak, and they didn't really explain why. And now all of a sudden, why he's stronger again.
Yeah, they never explained that he's pretty much all good now. Like they never explain how that happened.
Yeah, I think it's just I think it might have just been to give us a temporary moment of weakness for him. This one episode where it's like, wait, there's a glitch, and then the next episode is like, oh no, you're all good now.
Yeah,
you're all straight, good to go, a-okay, Jim. And what's, you know, I think what also might have made him think about that, about the whole rat thing, is that that's immediately after Otto tells him that she is off having intimate relations with Connor Graff.
So funny. She's what did he say? She's having sex with someone in a hotel room right now.
It's just he kind of coughs on his sandwich. Yeah, exactly.
But he's not jealous of Mary going off with another guy, but he's jealous of Jimmy. Maybe I'm thinking because it seems like they really have a connection. They really love each other, and he's worried of losing
you're talking
Mary.
about Otto?
Yeah, Mary to Jimmy. Yeah. Maybe that's why Otto.
Yeah, maybe he can see there's not really a deep connection with
right.
Connor.
Well, he even explains like this is the man she's having sex with. She's not necessarily seeing him.
Yeah.
So I think Otto doesn't necessarily see him as the threat that he sees Jimmy as. You know, and I've talked about this before, but Jimmy does have sort of this almost like instant sort of connection with Mary, despite having only known her for, I mean, really, what, maybe a month or two at this point, versus her own twin brother. But I did like that part of Mary. You know, she's this shrewd business person to the point of, I mean, owning her sexuality and using it, you know, for her own means, you know?
Well, she's kind of like, I would imagine, the man in the relationship. So
that's what it seems like.
Maybe with Jimmy, maybe she enjoys being saved. Maybe she
interesting.
enjoys, you know,
point.
being a little more like the traditional like female role. Maybe with Jimmy, she feels like she can kind of like relax her guard, whereas with Otto, she's always having to take care of him. And maybe with Jimmy, she feels like she can be taken care of.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, she's always giving Jimmy those like goo eyes or you know, whatever.
But we did have that fight scene between Mary and Jimmy over by that punching bag. So it seems like there might be elements of kind of both dynamics. Now we had talked about this. Jamie and I talked about this when Connor first appeared, because the very first episode that he appeared in, he was kind of there for 30 seconds and then just kind of effed off, and no one really ever heard from him again. And now we're getting the sense of him kind of being the big bad of the whole season, it seems like. You know, we keep getting these kind of crimes of the week where it's like, oh, Duval and Jimmy can team up and put this person away, and then we never hear from him again. But now we've got this guy that's, you know, intrinsically linked to the Goodwin twins and to Looking Glass and stuff like that. What do we think that he's going to do with what he knows?
He's going to try to bring them down. He definitely wants to expose them. I'm really worried for Jimmy's safety as well. I just want to get rid of this guy. He has bad news.
I could tell he was bad news as soon as Mary left the room, and he was
he's
steaming.
He's just stewing. And then it's like, all right, guys, we get that he's evil just from the stewing. And then just to add that little exclamation point.
Darn, you're going to live.
Bitch. He just says bitch. Like,
bitch.
Did we need the bitch?
And you can tell that he really doesn't like Mary. I mean, he doesn't have true feelings for Mary either, because he would have been happy that she's surviving.
Right.
But instead, he was just so
bitch
mad.
Gonna live.
Yeah.
Bitch gonna live.
Exactly. He was waiting for it. He was like, all right, this is going to be a 6-month booty call. It'll be totally fine.
And you can tell from the previous episode, she was like, oh, the treatment's not working. I'm getting weaker. Oh, do you have time for a quickie? That's too bad. You want to hook up?
Yeah.
That was
so he's in it.
shady.
Everyone's in it it for the power, guys. Everyone's in it for the power. He's in it for a little bit more sinister means, it seems like. But it does seem like if he either goes public with this or if he kind of blackmails them, something like that, this could mean obviously disaster for Jimmy. He could turn into just a human test subject, basically.
I think he can just take the code for himself and use it to make money and not...
Who, Connor?
Connor, and not expose Jimmy. And he can just use it for his own personal gain and power.
He could. Will he? We don't know, but... And I will say, though, in Connor's defense, even though I don't like him at all, Mary was just like, yeah, I know you've worked hard, but, we're not going to team up anymore.
The merger's
no
off.
big deal. The
now that I'm going to live, the merger's off.
Yeah, so nonchalant, didn't care whatsoever.
That was pretty cold of her.
That's the thing, yeah. I think there's that kind of iciness between the Goodwin twins. Otto's is obviously a little bit deeper, but, Mary's a very cold businesswoman, She's like, well, now that my numbers are improving, I can work.
Yeah. Thanks for the lay.
Exactly. We see a lot of interesting stuff. We see this, this doctor that's kind of the cutter of this whole underground kind of body modification movement. I feel like this show is at its best when it's dealing with these really dark, kind of intense, disturbing sort of storylines, I think those are the kind of cases where Jimmy can sink his teeth into it,
I think the writers are super creative, and I think all of the villains are super unique, and it's much different than villains I've seen in other TV shows, so I really like that aspect.
Yeah, you're right. It's not like a CSI or anything. They are, kind of deep and dark, but then again, at times there is a little bit of that lightheartedness to it, so I kind of like the mixture of the two, and how original they are. You're right.
Yeah, we definitely get a lot of kind of shifting tones, for as much comedy as we get from the interactions between Jimmy and Duval and Jimmy and Helen and Duval and Helen, things like that. We do get, these guys that are serial killers and body modification experts, and there are little things that that throw me off a little bit. I feel like a lot of the villains that we've seen are kind of dumb so far.
No, I think Jimmy is super smart. Is it part of his new superhuman powers that he can take such huge leaps of theories?
Logically,
monsters. Yeah, I know exactly what that is.
Well, and so part of it is Arthur putting together such a dead-on sketch of Caleb the Widowmaker. But then not only that, I feel like if Caleb the Widowmaker has fallen into this scheme with this doctor, they're going around, they've murdered 8 prostitutes at this point in the middle of these body modification experiments. But then they're basically able to Google Caleb and just find his face on the internet. His face is dead center in this article about body modification. It's like, oh, yep, here's my name, here's my face. Come find me at the bar, the public ass bar that I worked at.
Yeah.
Is it just their technology, though? Their technology is so advanced, they can dig up these articles that are
we have talked about that. We have talked about Looking Glass I've talked about it being very Skynet-esque at this point. And I think that that's something that Connor can definitely use against the Goodwins and against the Pritchards, is that, if he turned that into a public issue, if it's not already in the world of the show, which I imagine it would be, but he can turn that into look, are you comfortable with these twins, one of which has 0 social skills, having this much power and this much access to your information? So it's interesting stuff, but I like this episode a lot, and this doctor was really chewing the scenery in this episode. Yeah. He is so over the top, but I dug it.
He's creepy. He was just really
with his marriage fantasy.
I mean, okay, first of all, she should have known something was really shady with him with that. What man, even if he's paying for you, is gonna pay for a marriage fantasy? Yeah. I mean, really?
Just he could go out and get the real thing. He's a doctor. Anyone will marry him in a minute,
Why is he paying for that?
Exactly.
That's hilarious. And I do feel like everyone that comes in contact with Jimmy has these very on-the-nose moments of like Jilly has this moment of he's a badass, but he's a really old soul. Yeah. And it's all right, guys, before it was Gracie, but now that Gracie is on this trip, we need someone else to come this close to finding out that this is actually a 75-year-old man.
Exactly.
But I did like the dynamic between Jilly and Mary. The fact that she isn't just some dumb hooker off the street. She's very, well-read and intellectual and like I said, knows about the Goodwin twins and about Looking Glass. It did seem like there was kind of this mutual respect between the two.
Yeah.
Well, Mary was very uncomfortable with her at first. Mary was kind of like, I'm better than you because you're a hoe and you're in my house and now you gotta wear my clothes and
Exactly. No, but what do you think Jimmy brought her back? I feel like for two reasons. Yes, to make Mary jealous, but also does he want to see how far he can push it? You know, he's already going out whenever he pleases, and now is he trying to push the bar even more by bringing people back?
Well, I think with Jimmy, with that particular act, I think he was more trying to like, all right, if the cops don't believe her, this is maybe a challenge. This is something that I can kind of do on my own. I guess in a way he was sort of flexing his muscles a little bit, but you know, he's like, all right, I've never seen him. He says, I've never seen a real monster, so you know, let's see.
I get the sense that Jimmy's trying to right a lot of wrongs in his previous life, and my sense with him bringing her back was, maybe to make her a little jealous, but also like that was really the only way to protect her while he investigated.
Yeah, and she was so dumb. Why would you leave? And then why would you go out? I know he was a regular, but go out with a guy the night that happened? I would be too freaked out. It might make me reconsider
that very night, exactly.
you know.
Maybe she had bills to pay.
Yeah.
You know? She just lost a whole day of work.
Maybe her laptop's at the Mac store like mine is right now. And she needed like $300 to get her logic board fixed. She's like, I gotta take this client. I don't know.
Times is rough, guys. You gotta get this money. Now, another thing that I liked about this episode is that we saw kind of Otto standing up to Jimmy and to Duval. You know, it reminded me a lot of this case or this back and forth going on right now between Apple and the government. You know, they're trying to get into the phones of the San Bernardino shooters, and Apple's saying no. And I felt like that was kind of paralleled, whether intentional or not, by Otto's refusal. Like, no, I'm not just some monkey that's gonna jump whenever you ask me to. Just acting on principle.
I was actually really annoyed that he didn't help, because while this was happening, a girl was out there in danger, like that exact moment.
Sure.
So it
might have been the
like,
wrong moment to take a principled stance.
Yeah, he should have. He was so stubborn. Just suck it up and help.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe he felt like his technology is being like misused right now, you know?
I think
like,
that's exactly how he feels, yeah.
Yeah, because they brought Jimmy back specifically with the sole purpose to save Mary's life, and he's like, now he's just running around town.
Yeah, it's like,
solving
hey,
crime.
we didn't set out to make Super Cop.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess,
you're cancer cure guy. You're not Super Cop.
But do you think we'll get to the point? I feel like we're going to get there where they all know every week we're going to solve a case. They all enjoy helping Jimmy, helping Duval out.
Oh, everyone's just being big one happy family? Oh,
Okay,
no way.
what are we going to solve today?
No way. Absolutely not. I've been saying, Jamie can attest, I've been saying all season that there's going to be a huge butting of heads between Jimmy and Otto, for sure. He may not be like the villain in the black hat like I thought at the beginning of the season, but there's definitely going to be a butting of heads between the two of them. And we saw a little bit of Otto kind of standing up for himself again in episode 7, which we'll get into. But let's talk about kind of the biggest thing that happened at the end of episode 6, and it's that car ride between Connor and Alexa. Up until this point, I know you suspected her
that she
a
was
little
shady.
bit.
Yeah,
I never got that in the least. I thought it was just like, oh, this is this cute like mother hen kind of that's doting on Mary, but we'll never see anything more of her.
And I was wondering why they trusted Alexa so much. I'm like, they're so funny and worried about everyone else. What does she have? So we're kind of getting more answers now. And I'm still wondering why she trusts Connor so much, too.
Right. Well, at this point, Connor's kind of using her to get Otto's work and get his notes and things like that. And we'll find out a little bit more in episode 7. But, Alexa comes home to this old man and she asks him about doing the wrong things for the right reasons. So it's I loved seeing that side of Alexa that I definitely didn't expect.
And I was like, oh, she wants her dad to be cute.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Little do we know,
That's
actually.
so cute. It's her dad.
And let's see, what is the date today? Because we've got in a couple
February
weeks.
28th.
In a couple weeks, we've got a very, very special guest. We've got Alexa herself, Vanessa Lengy's coming in studio to talk Second Chance. So this is perfect timing.
On March 13th.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you. The masses are teaming with that news. But yeah, so that'll be very interesting. With that, let's get into episode 7. That time in the car. What do you think about this episode, guys?
I liked this episode. In that, I felt like we got to see more of Jimmy wrestling with his conscience, trying to set things right with his family, mistakes he made with his family. And I like seeing that struggle. I think that adds to the heart of the show. It really does.
It does. And it was good seeing the rest of the cast, too. Mary didn't have a huge part in this episode. We saw more of Helen, and they introduced Wally, who may come and go in the show. But, yeah, it was really nice to see some other characters, too, as well.
So here's my question. You know, when Alexa, she sneaks into the house, into the areas that Arthur kept saying, Alexa, you do not have permission to enter this part of the house. Why didn't Arthur rat her out? I was expecting him to rat her out to, like, one of the twins. Like, just so you know, Mary.
Right, exactly.
Alexa was in parts of the house she should not have been in, but Arthur didn't rat her out.
And where was Otto, too? Wouldn't he get some type of alert or something?
Because it was like 3 a.m.
Push notifications from Arthur.
Yeah. I think Arthur fell down on the job.
Yeah, you know?
Because Jimmy basically said, it's okay, Arthur. I think Arthur just listened to Jimmy and was like, all right, it's all right.
I see. Oh, that's right. He does say that.
Yeah.
And he does, one thing that I didn't catch on the first viewing, but I caught later on, is that Jimmy kind of makes this offhanded comment when Alexa's like helping him along as he's stumbling over drug. He says, "You're very strong," and we find out. I think we get a sense later of why she's so strong.
I did not catch that. That's awesome.
Guys, we're blowing minds
We
here.
are.
I didn't catch that either. I thought she must do CrossFit.
Everyone does CrossFit.
Everyone is CrossFit. We see Mary teeing off on that punching bag. Legs is doing CrossFit. Everyone's just keeping fit, guys.
Exactly.
Gotta keep it tight.
2016.
Keep it tight. Let's see. And yeah, we saw the introduction of Wally Luskin, the amazing Breckenmeyer, one of my favorites, from Clueless, from Robot Chicken, Franklin and Bash, all this amazing stuff. Absolutely. Guys, we love Breckenmeyer here at AfterBuzz. We're just gonna keep listing off his filmography. But I loved this character, this kind of sad sack that like has reunited with Helen after 25 years. That was originally scared off by the sheriff. And we do see Jimmy kind of, warm up a little bit.
Yeah.
He isn't, obviously we knew that he was the type of dad that was probably going to pull a shotgun on his daughter's boyfriends. But, we see him kind of turn over a new leaf and warm up to people. Maybe people aren't as weaselly as I thought that they once were.
Yeah, I thought that was really sweet of him. And I think over the course of the episode, he also felt guilty for the way he treated Helen in his past life. So I thought that was a really nice touch that they included that.
Well, he has perspective now. Like now he knows what people really thought of him.
A little bit of death will do that to you guys.
I mean, before nobody would say to his face, what a jerk you are. But now that he's presumed dead, people are speaking freely about what they really thought of him, and I think that's really that's hitting him. He's
we have seen that from him. He's obsessed with sidling up to people and go like, "So, what'd you think of this Jimmy guy?"
Yeah.
Finding out how many people were at my funeral. I love that line where it's like you get a little bit dead and everyone thinks that they can just do anything they want. Yeah. Now we get this kind of this really complex storyline about Wally being a parole officer. One of his parolees, Jasper Willits, kind of almost kind of framing him. It seems like in a way, kind of making him a part of this plan. Against as well. He's like, we're gonna wire this much money into your account. You're already getting paid. You might as well go along with it anyway.
But I feel like at that point he could have gone to the police and said something's up, and that would have been the smartest move.
And that's why we see later on he does get a little bit of a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, not too bad. He still kind of has this plan with Helen to wait for me.
Yeah, he'll be out in 3 months on good behavior.
Exactly.
Maybe less.
Then we'll have maybe a big wedding or something too. But it was nice that he finally, even though he doesn't realize it, somehow they're all gonna find out, and Jimmy will give him approval, say, yeah, it was me, and I'm sorry, and you and Helen are meant to be together. So I love all that sappy romance and all that.
So that's what we're dealing with on the surface. But let's talk about Alexa a little more. We get a little bit more of her story in this episode. We see her kind of sneaking in after Jimmy is stumbling around drunk. She goes over, takes a peek at Otto's regeneration code. She emails it to Connor, and we find out that Otto threw her out before she was formed. Do we think? I mean, obviously we get a shot later on in the episode of her, in this wedding photo from decades and decades ago. what I think, and I could be wrong, but what I got the feeling is that she was kind of, Connor might have been the one that kind of had a prototype of this code and maybe, you know, like grew her a little bit, and then Otto was like, no, this is all wrong.
I personally think it was Connor who did it. And
Right.
I think either it was Otto's code and Connor stole it, or Connor and Otto developed it together. But I think it was all Connor, and I don't think Otto knows that this happened.
Sure.
I was kind of under the impression that Otto did it. He built her, and then something didn't go right, or he didn't think that he created her, and
Right.
somehow Connor got her and finished her off and created her, and now they're gonna work together and somehow
The
get
reason
them.
I think that they haven't, or Otto is not aware, is because he said that he had only tested on animals before.
In the first episode,
So
yeah.
I think he would have mentioned, well, we tried it on that one girl and it didn't work.
What I'm thinking is that they might have worked on it together. Connor wanted to kind of jump into human trials right away. Otto said no. Then once Mary gets cancer, he's like, oh, where are some people that we can test this out on? So yeah, we find out that she's trying to get this regeneration code to help her husband, her elderly husband. I mean, do we think that this code floating around is going to create this little community of superheroes and supervillains?
I don't know. Like, my thing was, okay, so she gives the code, then what happens? Could something go wrong and her husband becomes like a Frankenstein version of them?
Could be.
You know?
Or evil, who's to say that they're going to be good like Jimmy?
Yeah.
Sure, exactly.
And also Jimmy had such a specific genetic code that it might not work with everyone.
They have said many, many times that he's one of a kind. He's one in a million. He's got this very unique code.
Oh, what I noticed this episode, he didn't go in the tank. Didn't need to go in the tank.
Oh, right, and he was strong. You're right. Didn't go in the tank.
Yeah.
Even when he was really drunk that night.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And he brings up this really interesting point of, he in his previous life he had this scar from jumping a fence, and his time in the tank kind of restores him back to perfection without any scars or identifying traits. It seems to be kind of eliminating a lot of his individuality. What do we think about that?
The scar moment was really interesting because I think it showed how much he really does love his wife, which we really haven't gotten into the background of that.
Right.
And I think Mary was also a little bit jealous in this moment. I don't know if you guys caught that, but it seems like, he did love his wife, and we don't hear much about her.
Right. Yeah, we really haven't heard much
Do we
of
know
anything.
if she's alive or if she's not?
I think she's passed away.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, they might have mentioned it in like the first or second episode, but really nothing since then.
And Duval, no one talks about her, but I feel like he has a hard time talking about that. He didn't want to talk about his dad for a while.
Right.
So that could be another reason too.
Yeah, and then Gracie also is kind of, she's been vanished for a couple
Yeah,
episodes.
I don't like that.
I think Duval mentioned she's on like a school trip or something like that. I think that was just like an add-in, like, oh, we've got to explain Gracie being
Yeah,
gone for
maybe
so
like
long.
the actress was like gone or something.
right. But like we said, we did see a lot of Helen in this episode, and we saw kind of that was another approach to Jimmy warming up to people and realizing that he might have been a little bit too harsh. We find out that at kind of his worst, he had called Helen an idiot, he had called Duval an idiot, and I think, like you said, I think dying gave him a little bit of perspective.
Well, I mean, he's kind of like, I think how we all wish we could be sometimes. Like, don't you ever wish you could be the fly on the wall in a room and like find out what people really think of you?
Right.
You might not want to know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
He's a
I think it's far too fragile for that.
Yeah, he's a fly on the wall now. He gets that gift of knowing what people really, thought of him.
A very freakishly strong fly
Yeah.
on the wall.
Yeah.
And I loved it when he was in the car with Duval too, because he was getting so much joy out of it. He's like over having this great father-son moment.
Yeah, we got
and
snacks.
that was so cute. It was so cute. And I like that Duval is finally letting him in too. Like he's letting him do the cases with him and help him out before he'd be like, no, this is not for you, get away. So I think they're gonna eventually be a really good team.
And how do you guys feel about like their relationship? Like, I feel like it's very believable that Jimmy's his dad, and even though technically that actor's probably younger than Duval, I believe him as his father.
It's the dynamic that they have is very kind of familial, and they have great chemistry for sure.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, kind of the first half of the season might have been dealing more about their approaches to solving cases and how they kind of interact with each other. Jimmy's obviously a very old Seattle, as he calls it, and Duval is very kind of by the book. And I think they've finally gotten to a point where they've so meshed and they've so kind of met in the middle that's like, all right, we can forget all that. I know Jimmy's going to do some illegal stuff. I'm fine with it at this point.
Yeah, there was a moment when Duvall was looking at all of that private information that Arthur brought up, and he's like, I really shouldn't be looking at this, but I am.
It's so illegal.
And he asks the question and just continues it.
Yeah, exactly. So now they can deal more with the cases that they're working on, more with their kind of interpersonal dynamic, things like that. Because we did get, a few episodes ago, Duval kind of asked him, hey, you need to stay away from Gracie and Helen for a while. So it seems like he's sort of relented on that, at least as far as Helen goes. He might be a little bit more protective of Gracie.
But I think he was almost going to admit to Helen that his secret.
That's what it
We were
seemed like.
so close to it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
hopefully next episode or sometime soon he does.
Although that conversation had some weird overtones to it. Like, it was reminding me a little bit of Back to the Future with Marty and his mom, where it's like, this is getting a little bit too romantic. It seemed like
didn't
it.
feel that way at all.
If we didn't know anything about the show and we didn't know anything about that relationship, I would have thought like, oh, for sure they're about to kiss right now.
Really? I didn't get that
She
at all.
thinks he's his brother, though.
Right. But we do know that she was at least attracted to him at first.
In the beginning at the bleachers at the game, you're right.
Right. But
he's a good-looking guy.
Rob Kaczynski, very handsome, of course. Now let's talk about, speaking of family dynamics, let's talk about Otto and Mary's parents, things like that. We find out that Otto's kind of taking this day. It's sort of a ritualistic day for him where he doesn't speak at all. He doesn't say a word because it's the anniversary of their parents' death. And of course, it falls on the day where they really need his help.
They need Otto,
for, to solve this case. We find out that when Mary and Otto were very, very young, when they were in the back seat, their parents were up in the front, and Otto was just kind of rattling off facts about the solar system.
Very verbal back then.
He talked a lot. And that was a very, very interesting contrast. And he's talking so much that his dad kind of gets annoyed, turns around, says, I wish I could go just one day without him talking. And then, of course, that triggers the accident. We lose the Goodwin's parents, and Otto kind of takes this day as a day of silence going forward.
I think Otto should look at it like this. Unfortunately, my dad didn't know how to deal with a very smart, intelligent, verbal child, and he killed himself.
Right.
Took his eyes off the road to turn around and look at me, and that was his bad.
Sure.
I feel like any young kid, though, I would feel guilty, too, even though technically it's not his fault.
Right.
If he would have just been quiet like his father asked. And he was so talkative back then. I wonder if that's why he's so quiet now.
Sure.
I think if this didn't happen, maybe he'd be a completely different person.
Absolutely. And it is, it's heartbreaking to see because he, with the kind of the condition that he has and with kind of the lack of social skills that he has, he does kind of retreat inwardly. And we saw him retreat into the old version of his bedroom, the kind of introversion that Mary hates and wish he would kind of not rely so much on. But it's sad to see, and he even says like, I killed my parents.
Yeah, see, the dad should have did what my mom used to do. She would not turn around because she would just reach the hand around.
Keep your eyes on the road. You can still administer some justice as long as you keep your eyes on the road.
Get the back of her hand. It was like, okay, I'm good.
But we see a little bit more of kind of Otto butting up against the Pritchards in that, like, look, we need your crazy technology, we need your crazy logic, you need to help us with this. And it's I was waiting, and this kind of happened a couple episodes ago when we were dealing with the the design team that designed the app, but it's these moments that I really, really think that Otto is going to kind of come out of a shell and have a breakthrough and stuff like that, and it's always Mary that kind of has to coax him out of it. Even when he's going back into flashback mode, she has to kind of almost go into his head, as it were.
Mary must be exhausted.
Not only is she battling cancer, she's got to deal with Otto and all this.
That's some heavy lifting. She's like got to deal with her brother, always like, come on, Otto. No, Otto, it's not your fault.
Right.
Otto, talk to me, please. Otto, I'm here for you. I love you. I'll always be here for you.
Right.
Like, man, no wonder she needed a good lay from her dude on the side.
But you know what? Otto is growing, though. I was proud of him. He finally was able to talk on a day that he normally doesn't.
Sure.
And he did step step up and really kind of help crack the case. So,
but I feel like he talked after in his head his parents had died, so maybe he had gone through the whole thing.
And it's interesting because she says, don't go all the way to the end, of this kind of flashback. And he does, he comes in, he speaks on this day when he does it usually. And of course, it's always very convenient. Like, I was just thinking about prisons. Like, why did nobody else put that together to look for prisons? Like, that wasn't that big of a logic leap that we needed Otto to figure that out, guys.
I see. I'm just now getting that.
Yeah, he says, and there were a lot of moving parts to this episode for sure. I kind of had to double back on my notes. But he says, oh wait, he's an ex-convict. We should be thinking about prisons. That's how they find out that all of this money is coming from this investment banker, Brian Mellenberg. All of that's going from his account to Wally's account via all of these other sources, all over the world. I mean, they're doing a good job at, evading the FBI.
Yeah. I'm telling you, sometimes there are leaps of logic to me. I just can't keep up. I'm like, okay, prisons, how did he come to that conclusion? I don't know.
Right. And it does seem that like the FBI is sometimes a little bit easily evaded. Like we see in episode 6, all they need to do is just clean the room before they leave. And then it's like, Pam, we have no idea if they were ever here. Like the police decide that these monsters that Jilly are talking about are just hallucinations.
Yeah, no hair, no DNA, nothing.
It had to have been something.
Monster lives matter.
Footprints or something.
Monster lives matter.
Monster lives matter, guys. Remember that. Official second chance hashtag. But we get a lot of kind of family dynamics, a lot of a lot of good stuff going on. Do we think that we'll see Wally again by the end of this season?
I hope so. I like him.
Because we got to think he's technically locked up for 8 to 12 months. Like you said, he could be out early on good behavior, especially given that he's kind of gotten in with the Pritchards, especially with Duval.
I hope he comes out like he did in Clueless with his long hair and maybe giving him time for his hair to grow out.
The skateboard, the flannel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Guys, go watch Clueless.
My favorite. I love that movie.
But I love that scene where he teams up with Jimmy to administer some old Seattle justice to Jasper Willits. Jimmy kind of has both of his hands and he's crushing him, and Wally kind of has this moment where he gets to explain what the sheriff is. He gets the full sheriff. But it's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm trying to think. I mean, we covered a whole lot.
Yeah. One thing we didn't address. Did you guys think there was a metaphor between the monsters or beautiful people becoming monsters? What did you think of that?
So if there was any kind of symbolism there?
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think that's what they were going for. I feel like if we're gonna, try to psychoanalyze these monster villains, I think what they may have been getting at and how it might relate to the Pritchards is that everyone's kind of shades of gray. Even beautiful people can be monsters, and I think maybe part of what they were getting at is that everyone's kind of got this light side and a dark side. Obviously Jimmy is just trying to do what's best, but he also goes about it sometimes in very dark, very violent ways. So I think that might have kind of been where they're going with it. What'd you think?
I was thinking maybe something about beautiful people having big egos and being ugly inside, or maybe the doctor just had a fetish and wanted monsters to look beautiful.
I mean,
I don't know. I couldn't tell.
It could be both of those things. The doctor was very kind of conventionally handsome and attractive, and of course, he's murdered 8 people by the time we come into this episode. But I think you could be right. I think there's definitely a lot of symbolism going on in Second Chance, especially as we get later on in the season. One thing we didn't touch on in episode 7 is that as Brian Mellenberg is kind of, he's being transferred for his radiation therapy, which again is another parallel between him and Mary, having cancer, a cancer that leaves them still very attractive, as I've said before. He's kind of out for revenge. He's out for justice. He says that, people have to pay for what they do. And so he's been keeping this judge locked up in this cabin.
Another leap of logic on Jimmy's part. He's sitting at the bar watching television, and suddenly out of the blue,
it's that line about line about people needing to pay and kind of being very angry at this judge.
Like, he has a superhero's brain, clearly.
Exactly. And I mean, in like, you know, to be serious, I think we have seen a little bit about that. It's not just his body that's kind of become superpowered. I think maybe it has kind of sharpened his reflexes, maybe improved his critical thinking skills, something like that. But that wasn't what I believe. But it's Pangs. Pangs is where he does his best thinking. Although it may not have been at Pangs, but we see Pangs pop up a lot.
We do.
Every episode. I think that's his go-to place. Yeah.
Just notching those, carving those notches behind the bar. Every time, every week, there's a new villain put away. Just carve that new notch in there. But yeah, he's, Brian's keeping this judge locked up. He's got this very elaborate plot where he's like, I'm only going to live for 8 months, so I'm going to give you just enough food to survive until then. Then I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to keep you in chains. Like, we've got some very elaborate thinkers.
So dark. Like, there's a lot of darkness in a lot of these episodes. I'm like, I don't want to see him chained up looking like a rat. His hair was all long and a mess. Ugh.
Sure. So we've covered episode 6. We've covered episode 7. So, guys, it's time for my favorite part of the show. Mark, let's get some predictions going.
Ooh. Yay! Ooh, I don't know what to expect here. This is cool.
I love springing that on people. Oh, so good. But yes, Nikki, at the end of every episode, we get that sweet theremin going, get those sweet UFO lights going, and we talk about what is going to happen in the remainder of these episodes for season 1 of Second Chance. Who wants to start?
I want some action. I want to see some action between Mary and Jimmy. They have
that
great
kind of
chemistry.
action.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of action.
Let's see.
They have great chemistry, and I'm just so excited for them to finally get together. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm hoping soon.
Right. What do we think the repercussions of that are going to be in terms of maybe Mary's relationship with Otto or Jimmy's relationship with Otto?
I think it's really going to hurt their relationship. Otto, I'm worried he's going to... It's hard. He's kind of in the middle. The only good thing is that we really need Jimmy to keep Mary alive. So that'll keep Jimmy in the house. But as soon as Mary's better, Jimmy is going to be out on the street. So I'm very worried for him.
Right. Jamie, what do you think?
I think in the next few episodes, Jimmy will tell Helen his secret. And I also had this weird feeling that there's a connection between Mellenberg and Connor.
Okay.
Just because he had cancer and he was bad and he's really rich, I just
Connor could maybe help him.
Yeah, maybe they're just somehow linked, and maybe Mellenberg is helping finance this whole regeneration thing. I don't know.
We do know he has
thought.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion, guys. It's a lot of dollars. Stacey, what do you think?
I predict in the next few episodes that Otto and Mary will kiss.
Well, maybe that too.
Their relationship.
I didn't hear you. I was just like, yes, go on.
They do have a weird relationship. They're a little bit too close. I wouldn't be too shocked, actually.
Sure.
I know. My prediction was your prediction that Jimmy will tell Helen that he's her dad, and I predict that it'll take her time to accept it, just like it did Duvall. But I think she probably somewhere in her heart already knows, because she's always saying it feels like he's still here. It feels like he's still here.
I think she's going to be happy too and really excited. Where Duval in the beginning was like, "I don't want you. You're supposed to be dead. Go." But I think she'll really be happy to have her dad back.
Sure. Now, I think Connor's is... I'm thinking he's going to go public with some part of this. I don't know if he's going to go public about, about Otto's code or about this guy that they're keeping alive. I think people are going to find out on a much bigger level that, this guy was resurrected from the dead. And that's going to mean bad news for everyone involved. I think if there's anything we know about the mass public, it's that they think that dead people should stay dead. Yeah. So I think as much good as Jimmy's doing, I don't know if it's going to rub people the right way.
Either that or that will happen and people will want to be involved and want their sick ones, or when they're old, they'll want to come back to life. And so it'll be kind of like if someone discovered the Fountain of Youth today, it will just create mad chaos everywhere.
Yeah, and it's like I said, that's gonna mean awful things for Jimmy, who I think in a case like that would be reduced to a human test subject. They would basically just chain him up, and it's like, all right, you're gonna give your blood to this person, this person, this person. I mean, it raises a lot of philosophical questions. If you're gonna makes someone's blood the cure for cancer, how is that going to affect the world at large?
But we don't know it's a cure for cancer. It's just a cure for Mary's cancer.
Right. Yeah. It's just improving her numbers.
Yeah, and you're right. And she's not healed all the way. So
yeah, and it may not work for other people. Like apparently their DNA, their codes or whatever is compatible. So it may not work for other people.
But with more research, maybe they could figure out like who's a match for who.
Could be.
I don't know.
Oh, lot to sink our teeth into, guys. But Mark, let's get that sweet outro music going. And for now, guys, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me, Nikki Preston, at Nikki Preston TV for Facebook and Twitter, and Instagram at Nikki.Preston.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JamieBanks_, and I'll tweet you back if you tweet me.
Oh, that's so nice. I'll tweet you. I will tweet you.
Okay.
You can find me on Twitter at Stacey Santiago. That's STACEY Santiago. And on Facebook, Stacey Santiago.
There you go. And as always, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at Ty Matthews PMA. Find me on other after shows, Monday Night Raw, The Magicians, Lucha Underground, all that good stuff. Like I said, on iTunes, download, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars if you're nasty, like every week. And we'll be right back here, same time, same channel next week, talking episode 8. These episodes are flying by, guys.
They are.
Talking episode 8 of Second Chance. Guys, we appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. But until next week, take a chance. Peace.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.